Welcome to the Foundations Before Change class. This class is not about fixing habits, setting better goals, or trying harder. It's actually about something most change conversations skip entirely, and that is what your life is built on before you even try to change it. Trying to change who level problems, identity, worth, meaning with what level tools, goals, habits, and systems doesn't work because real change doesn't start with behavior, it starts with foundations. And that's what we're going to talk about in this class. The main problem is that we live in a world obsessed with the what we produce, what we accomplish, what we own. And from a very young age, we're taught explicitly or implicitly, right? So on purpose or either through watching and absorbing what's happening in our environment, we're taught that these things are not just indicators of success, but actual indicators of who we are, meaning that what we do, achieve, and accomplish and have defines who we are. And that understanding, which is really labeled as that's the way of the world, shapes then how we pursue change, worth, and meaning. So, performance, achievement, possession, none of those are bad on their own, but they're not foundations for our lives or to define who we are. When something feels wrong in our lives or just it's off, we're dissatisfied, or we know that we're misaligned somehow, or we're bored with our lives, or we just have a desire for something different, one of the first things that we do is set a goal. We don't usually ask, okay, well, who am I being that created the circumstances or the conditions or the desire that I have? Or what am I building on? What we do ask is, what should I do differently? What should I fix? What system should I put in place to get the outcome that I'm looking for? And that instinct, oh, it makes sense because it feels actionable, right? It gives us something to work on. And quite frankly, it's what we know. So the problem isn't that we try to change, the problem is where we try to change from. So something in us notices that something is wrong at the foundational level, but what we know is how to try to fix it at the behavioral level. This brings us to what I call the behavior modification layer, and this is where all self-improvement basically operates from. And to be clear, this layer is not useless, it's just incomplete, and it's not where to start from. Listed on this slide is the standard playbook for what is recommended for setting goals and making changes in our lives. This list is familiar because it works up to a point. Most people have tried several, if not all, of these things, and many saw results, at least for a while, right? So the question isn't, do these tools work? The question is, what are they actually capable of doing? Let's talk about productivity, right? So time blocking works. To-do lists work. Something like Pomodoro, that works. They help you get things done. But what they don't do is tell you why you feel driven to put things off, or for that matter, overwork, whichever one you're affected by. They don't resolve the belief that your worth is tied to output. And they don't change the internal pressure that comes back the moment life gets chaotic and stressful and you can't keep up with what you've put in place to help you manage your time and your productivity. Let's look at money and financial discipline. Budgets work. Apps that help you to budget and keep track of your money, they work. Heck, even spreadsheets work. They help you manage money. But what they don't address is if you have a fear of scarcity or control issues or the belief that money equals safety. Let's give credit where credit is due. These tools do some things very well. They help us manage life and get things done. They create positive feedback loops. They build consistency and commitment. They leverage small wins and momentum. They reduce friction for starting and maintaining behaviors. So, if your goal is behavior management, these tools are effective. But management is not the same as transformation. Here's where the problem shows up. These tools cannot transform who you are, and they can't rebuild foundations that can't support you or what you're trying to build. So when change gets hard, where life applies pressure, stress shows up, we're taught to keep the same course. Just try harder, set better goals, build stronger habits, be more consistent. I'm sure there's a different app out there that can help you be more consistent, improve your discipline, build more discipline, and then you'll be able to do that. Or hey, find your why, find better motivation. And this is critical because it's not that these tools are wrong. They're simply being asked to do a job they were never designed to do. And that's why change for so many people feels like they're just pushing against a weight that just simply won't move. Trying harder at the same level does not produce lasting change. And it's not because you lack discipline or because you're inconsistent or because you didn't want it badly enough. It's because behavior was never meant to carry identity, meaning, or worth. When we ask behavior to carry those things, pressure exposes the weakness. It exposes that that is not possible. So, this is where most people start blaming themselves when the real issue is structural, it's foundational. This is the core truth everything else builds on. Behavior is downstream from identity. You can modify behavior with effort, but only identity transforms how a life is lived. Modification is temporary, transformation is fundamental. If you want different outcomes, you don't start by forcing the water. You trace the flow back to its source. Now we're going to talk about foundation because, like I've been saying, most of us are trying to improve life at the level of behavior, but behavior is not where life is being built. If you want lasting change, you don't start by asking, what should I do differently? You start by asking, what is my life standing on? Foundations determine how you experience everything: pressure, relationship, rest, success, even God. So let's go there. Foundations don't just support life, they shape how you live it. If your foundation is performance, life feels like pressure. If your foundation is identity, life feels like alignment. Here's an example. Two people can both be resting on Sunday. One feels at peace about it, the other feels guilty. Same behavior, both of them are resting on a Sunday, but they're having different outcomes because they have different foundations. So before we address habits, routines, and discipline, we have to talk about foundations. When we hear the word foundation, most of us don't think about identity or truth. We think habits, disciplines, routines, system. In other words, we think if I just build better habits, my life will finally be stable. The belief is so common, it feels obvious. But habits don't create stability, they express what you're standing on. So if we misunderstand foundations, we end up building a beautifully organized life on something unstable. Here's the correction, and this is important. Habits are not foundations. Habits don't create foundations, they reveal them. Your habits show you what you're already building on. And that's why you can have strong habits, disciplined habits, consistent habits built on wrong foundation. The habit isn't the problem, it's the foundation underneath it. Here's an example. Let's take a highly productive person who has incredible habits, really good morning routines, great systems in place, but the foundation underneath all of those habits is that their worth is tied to output. So those habits don't lead to peace, they lead to exhaustion. Strong habits, wrong foundation. Pressure and stress, anxiety, that's where the wrong foundations get exposed. Behavior-based systems do work for a while. You get more consistent, you get more productive, your life feels structured. Schedules are clear, energy is high, stress is manageable. But then something happens, a loss, a health issue, conflict, uncertainty, extra responsibility, and suddenly those same habits that worked yesterday stop working. That doesn't mean you fell. It means that your behavior habit based foundation was never designed to carry the weight. Here's a quick example. Take two people who can communicate with each other really well when things are calm because they've learned the skills, they use the tools, but introduce pressure, conflict, jealousy, unmet expectations, some sort of loss, and suddenly the tools disappear. Pressure didn't ruin the relationship, it revealed what it was built on. Behavior cannot carry identity, meaning, worth, trust, purpose. Those belong to the right foundations. This is why people burn out even while doing all of the right things, because they're asking behavior to hold up the weight of identity. And behavior can't carry weight it was never designed to hold. So the question isn't, how do I fix my habits? The deeper question is, what am I asking my habits to carry? Now, between behavior and identity sits another layer, one we often confuse for foundation. Trust me, because I have lived with that confusion for, well, most of my life. And what I'm talking about are the psychological drivers, our beliefs and mindset and motives. These matter. They explain why we keep repeating patterns. They are key to understanding who we are. But I've come to realize now that explanations and understanding are not the same as foundations. The revelation that there was something greater than psychological insight is why this is why I had to now create this module, Foundation of the Who. So if this slide is challenging for you, you don't agree with it, I invite you to please stay and continue to learn in this module, continue to do this module. And I hope and pray that it will lead you to the revelation that I had. Because trust me, I get it. Like I said in the last slide, the way that I came to understand myself was through psychological insight. And I thought that that was the foundation of everything. The course, How to Become a Personal Storyteller, is all about reaching psychological insight to understanding how the events, the people in your experience have shaped and impacted who you are. So this dominated my understanding for a really long time. And it takes me going through the remainder of the course to really explain what's on this slide. I can't do it right here, right now, but just know that I am with you, right? I understand the tremendous value of psychological insight and the way that it increases self-awareness. It explains our behaviors, and it is part of reducing some of the symptoms and the pain and the trauma that we might be experiencing. But it is not the same as identity. Let's go ahead and transition into identity. Because if behavior can't carry identity and insight can't establish foundations, then something deeper has to. And that brings us to identity, not as behavior, not as personality traits, but as foundation. Not what you do, not how you feel, but who you're living from. Because when identity becomes foundation, your life stops being managed by pressure and starts being aligned from the inside out. Up to this point, we've been talking about why behavior based change keeps failing and why foundations matter. Now we need to name what those foundations are actually built on, and it is identity. Not identity as a label, not identity, like I said, as personality traits, and not identity as what we do, but identity as the foundation a life is built on. While most people don't know and understand what foundations are, the same is true about identity. Most people have boiled down identity to some sort of labels. I'm an artist. I'm disciplined. I'm a successful CEO. I'm a mom. I'm reliable. I'm organized. These are all labels. They're a description of behavior, roles, personality, and even feelings. They're not foundations, they're outputs, and they can change with time and circumstances and what's happening and with pressure. So, if your identity rises and falls based on a variety of things, then your foundation is unstable and you don't have a true identity. For identity to work as a foundation, we have to redefine it. We have to truly understand what it was designed to be. Real identity orients behavior, it is not derived from it. Real identity has to meet some really intense requirements. For example, real identity is not conditional. It's not performance based. We cannot earn it. It has to remain stable under pressure. It doesn't hinder us, it actually frees us. It must be capable of carrying our calling, our purpose, meaning, worth, and direction without collapsing under stress, loss, failure, criticism, suffering. When identity is right, behavior follows. All right, so in the closing of the class, we are going to take a look at the key takeaways from this class and a look at what is coming in the next class. Here are the key takeaways from this class. Behavior, not a foundation. Habits, not foundations. Psychological insight, not a foundation. All of those things are downstream. All of them reveal what you're standing on, but none of them can hold the weight of the life that you're trying to build. Only identity belongs to the foundation level, but we need to redefine what identity is and where it comes from. So, if change has felt hard, if progress hasn't lasted, and if insight hasn't translated into peace, nothing is wrong with you. You weren't failing, you're just building on the wrong foundation. So, this class didn't provide any answer just yet. I need you to continue on in the module, but I hope it did make something very clear. Before you can change anything you do, you must understand the foundation that you're living from. Next class, we are going to explore the different places people draw identity from, why many identities feel real but are actually counterfeit, and what is the true source of our real identity. Although for some this class might have been challenging, I hope that you still enjoyed it and that you will continue your commitment to the foundation of the Who module and discovering your real identity and what you want to build your life from.